Are Baylor and Alabama about to pull off a trade? Let's get locked on Baylor.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. I'm your host, Cam Stewart of ESPN Central Texas and the Cam Show on YouTube. Today, we're going over the possible trade in the transfer portal, if you can call it that, and the Bears adding a different player in the portal, another defensive guy who I cannot help but rave about. Look back at the college football playoff results this weekend and what that does just for the narrative of college football, because I know we love talking about that. And then a little fun segment at the end with JT Wistersill of Locked On Utes and talking about whether Utah belongs in this conference, the school, the program, and specifically the fans. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. If you're watching on YouTube, I do apologize. We've brought this show on the road quite a bit the last couple of weeks here, and it's the holidays. I'm trying to get some episodes in. So I am coming at you from a closet at a hunting lodge in South Carolina. Beautiful out here, beautiful place, but it does, kind of mess with my lighting and my background a little bit. And that door is half open, which is going to bug some people, but it gets really, really hot in this closet if I shut it all the way. So that's where we're coming from today. Happy Festivus, everyone. Happy Festivus. Boy, do I have some problems with you people. I got to air some grievances. I'm going to air some grievances about the Utah Utes fans later on in the show. But first, we have to look at what the Bears have been doing in the portal. And I think more so than even adding some good pieces was the fact that they haven't let much go. In fact, I most recently said it on Friday's episode, recorded Thursday night, talking about how, again, like it's just depth guys that are going, it's not starters. And then no sooner than I posted that for Friday morning, did the news come across that Corey Gordon Jr., the starting corner, did go into the portal for the Bears. And that's the first one that's like, damn. Is it program altering? No, but Corey Gordon's a good player. And I didn't want to see him go. And he's got some good Baylor ties. And you saw that long message. I mean, he clearly, like, it did seem genuine, like it was a tough decision for him to go. But that's Baylor's first, guy who started week one and started at the end of the season that is out in the portal. And a guy who improved throughout this year. I think he's only a sophomore. Is that correct? Maybe junior. But hadn't got much playing time before this season, kind of shifted in a little bit last year. He was the one who was not spotted right at the goal line on the Colorado Hail Mary that I was very critical of, but he came on throughout the season. I mean, he led the team in interceptions with 3. And that was something that Baylor desperately needed this year. Some guys who could get after and turn over the other team. And now he's in the portal. And not just that, but it was reported that on Saturday, he was visiting the University of Alabama, which does play football. You won't see them in that playoff thing this year, but they do play football, and they play it at a pretty high level. And anytime you see Alabama, when it comes to the portal, in or out, that's going to draw a lot of attention. We saw it with Baylor because one of their biggest portal pickups in this offseason has been Kobe Prentice, the wide receiver from Alabama. And now this could be like an even trade. Hey, we give you a playmaker on offense. You give us a playmaker on defense. And certainly once you make the visit and go to Alabama, it's tough to say no to Alabama. And we haven't seen much else in terms of, places that Corey Gordon is visiting or being offered by. And what I'm about to say might sound kind of like a loser mentality, but I think a lot of people think that Baylor has that no matter what, no matter how good Baylor gets. So I think that is a sign of, what Baylor could and should be doing and probably is doing. Like you never want your players to leave, but we talked about how tough the recruiting classes have been the couple years leading up to this one, this showed they got a 3-star guy in Corey Gordon and developed him into a star in college, right? Like he was tied for the team lead in interceptions this year with 3, not a huge number, but a pretty good number for a 12-game season. And now the likes of Alabama want to go and get him. Alabama has a disappointing season by their standards. They want to go out and bolster their team in the transfer portal, and they're looking at your guys. That is kind of a testament to what the program is doing right this year. But it's still the next step of this NIL transfer portal era, at least for Baylor, is retaining all of those guys. They retained Caden Jenkins last year, who got some really good offers out of the portal in terms of programs, which means, of course, money as well. A couple of big-time in-state programs that play in the SEC were quite interested in Caden Jenkins last year. He stuck around. You don't have the same luck with Corey Gordon this year. And it does highlight, again, a position of need for the Bears in the portal. They've added some good defensive players. We're going to talk about another one in a minute. But they have not upgraded at defensive back or cornerback, I should say. Devin Turner coming in as a safety from Northwestern is a pretty good get, but they have not upgraded at corner yet. And now that becomes even more of a pressing issue. No pun intended, just because Baylor plays a lot of press man. They need some help there. They really need some help there. You're not going to have Snacks Johnson anymore, who I thought had a really nice bounce back season. You're not going to have Corey Gordon. You'll probably have Caden Jenkins likely for just one more year. Like, you have got to get some, not just some depth there. You got to get some starters there, big time. And I'm not saying the clock is ticking, but you're under a week here until this window closes. And then you got another one in the spring, which Baylor did benefit from quite a bit this past year. But that becomes, for me, the most important position, right? It looks like you've sorted out linebacker. You need some guys on the defensive front. Absolutely. I think you still need one more receiver, but corner feels like the most thin, and interior defensive line feels the most thin right now for the Bears. So this could be a little swap. Man, Baylor needed a wide receiver. They go out and get Kobe Prentice from Alabama. Now Corey Gordon is looking at Alabama himself. And it goes to show once again, we talked about it from the Baylor lens, but a broader lens, like all those guys you see in the SEC that just think they're different, or you think they're different just because they're in the SEC, they're not always born and bred in the SEC. Some of them come from the Big 12 and do well in the SEC. So it's funny that all these fans, Alabama very much amongst those fan bases that are like, they don't even play football out there in the Big 12. And yet they're coming after some Big 12 guys. The Heisman Trophy winner played in the Big 12. One of the bye teams played in the Big 12. And now Alabama, a team that is desperate to get better after missing the playoff, is shopping in the Big 12 aisle for a guy like Corey Gordon. And maybe this changes from a fan standpoint, but for a guy like Corey Gordon, it's like, go be great. I know that's used a lot with guys leaving in the portal, but best of luck to you. I think he's got some real talent. I'm bummed that Baylor's losing him. I don't think it's, I don't think it reverses your fortunes totally for next year, specifically because you have a lot of time to go and get guys out of the portal, which Baylor's done well at. But that stinks. I thought he was one of your best defensive backs this year. And if nothing else, I know the guy that gets the most picks isn't usually the best corner, but you need that. Again, the last couple of years, really since the Sugar Bowl team, Baylor's really struggled to turn teams over. So you do need that, and Baylor's losing that with Corey Gordon. But hopefully gaining a playmaker on the other side of the trade from Alabama in Kobe Prentice. Let's look at who else the Bears were able to wrap up and get a commitment from this weekend. Let's talk about that next on Locked On Baylor. But first, a word from our sponsor, which is Rocket Money. Now, I use a lot of the sponsors that come with Locked On, but Rocket Money is one that saves my butt a lot, okay? Did they help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for and didn't know? It definitely happened to me. Like, definitely happened to me. I had a couple things that I wasn't using and was still subscribed to, and a couple of things that I was just like paying for 2 accounts and I only used one, including Adobe Premiere, which I use every day. Rocket Money saved me money, and it's easy for them to track it all down and keep it all in one place. It's like having that personal assistant without, paying a salary for a personal assistant. It's a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions. It monitors your spending, which helps me really a lot, and helps you lower your bills so that you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place: subscriptions, spending habits, the things you're spending on, or the goals you want to hit this year in 2025. You're making resolutions. Rocket Money is going to be big for you. It's got over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions. It can save you up to $800 a year. It's awesome. For me, the subscription tracker is huge because, again, you subscribe to so many things. You try to do the 1-week trial and then they start charging you. That's where Rocket Money is really going to help you. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked-on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked-on. One more time, rocketmoney/locked-on. Not just subtracting, the Bears adding in the transfer portal as well. Once again, on the defensive side, I really like the Phoenix Jackson pickup from last week at linebacker. Fresno State really came on last year, had a transformational year on the defensive side for them, and he lobbies it into a power 4 potential starting job next year. And I said at the end of that breakdown, I was like, look, I like Phoenix Jackson. I was hoping for Travion Barnes, and I really thought that because Phoenix Jackson came in, there would be no Travion Barnes, which is okay. Phoenix Jackson's got some good numbers. I think he's going to really help this team. And I was wrong in thinking that it was going to be one or the other, because Travion Barnes also committed to the Bears over the weekend. And again, another linebacker, you've probably bolstered that position enough. Hopefully, knock on wood, you've bolstered that position enough. But Travion Barnes from FIU is a guy I'm just really excited about. The Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year. You went out and got a Defensive Player of the Year from a Group of 4 conference, not a JUCO or not D2, which everyone would be like, oh, you got it from a Group of 4 conference. And last year, you got the Conference USA preseason Defensive Player of the Year. This year, you got the Conference USA postseason Defensive Player of the Year. And Travion Barnes' numbers were off the charts, man. Plays mostly in the middle, can play some outside as well, can get after the passer. 129 total tackles. 129. Once again, you put that on Baylor, he is the leading tackler for the team. 59 solo tackles, 3 sacks, 2 picks, and a touchdown. The guy's a playmaker. Baylor's had some steady defensive guys for the last couple of years here. Now they're picking up playmakers. And what did I say about Phoenix Jackson? What did I love about him? He's not one-dimensional. Okay, he can help you in pass coverage and in run support. That's something Baylor needs more of. They had it with Keaton Thomas, or they have it with Keaton Thomas. They're getting it with Phoenix Jackson. They're getting it with Travion Barnes too. 59 solo tackles, 3 sacks, can get after the quarterback, can wrap up anybody, and also 2 picks and a touchdown, a pick 6. And it's funny, I was watching some Travion Barnes film, which was his highlights, and his last interception against Middle Tennessee, the broadcaster says the most transformational player, or the biggest revelation on this FIU team was Travion Barnes and the standout year he had. Just a fantastic year coming in. He's got, I think, 2 years of eligibility to play with, at least one. Coming in at 6 foot, 224 pounds. You have got a lethal linebacking core if Phoenix Jackson and Travion Barnes play near where they played this year in terms of their production. With those two plus Keaton Thomas, that is a fantastic linebacker room. Like, really, really good. Again, you need to shore it up on the back end with some corners. You already went out and got a starting safety in Devin Turner, an all Big Ten safety in Devin Turner. Now you get the Conference USA Player of the Year and 3 pretty damn good linebackers who are pretty versatile as well. So I love the Travion Barnes pickup. Again, you need to look corner. You need to look defensive line. You need to look, I think, one more receiver. And Baylor will use both windows for that. They will probably not have everything filled by the end of this window, and that's okay. That's okay, fans. Because they utilized the spring window well last year. Boy, those college football playoff games, that was a dud, huh? It's almost like the first 10 years or so we had of the 4-team playoff. I mean, it was great in terms of atmosphere and hype for it, but those games sucked. And I think there are a lot of people reacting to this the wrong way. Okay? Because, just because those games stunk did not mean that those teams shouldn't have been in the playoffs. And Paul Feinbaum and of course Lane Kiffin were talking about how this was kind of a referendum for the SEC, that because these games sucked, it should have meant more SEC teams in there. And again, I just couldn't agree more, or couldn't agree less. I meant to say couldn't disagree more. Please, nobody cut that. I couldn't disagree more. That's, again, I mean, we knew that was going to kind of happen with the 12-team playoff, that this was just going to make more spots for SEC teams. But, someone had a great tweet about this. I want to credit them because I'm going to just steal what they said. Reagan Harris, who is of Oklahoma State Twitter, said, nobody questioned Tennessee being in the playoff over SMU. Tennessee 10-2, SMU 11-1. This tweet is just going to explain exactly how I felt about the weekend. So nobody questioned Tennessee at 10-2 being in over 11-1 SMU, 11-2 conference champion Arizona State, or 11-1 Indiana. Meanwhile, the Vols only had one ranked win all season long. They lost to 6-6 Arkansas and only beat one conference opponent by 2 touchdowns. And they got their doors blown off at Columbus. That is SEC bias. That's the problem. Not SMU. Not Indiana. None of it. That is the issue right there. And I could not agree more. I couldn't agree more with that. That's the perfect sign of SEC bias, that we had no problem with Tennessee getting in. And I bought into this. I picked Tennessee 7.5. And they were never in that game. Never. Ohio State had it 5 minutes in. The game was over. So yeah, you want to troll SMU for getting curb stomped by Penn State, a team that hates beating ranked teams. That's great. But here's the point. Okay, here's the point, Lane and Paul. That's the point. Tennessee going in and getting blown out and probably not having a resume to get in there in the first place. But you like the quarterback, you like the offense, and you like the patch they wear on their shoulder. Alabama's resume might have even been better than Tennessee's, but we just kind of, they weren't 11 or 12. So we just kind of let them get away with it. Totally let them get away with it. They're sitting there at 9. And Ohio State was a better team, even based on resume. They showed you on Saturday they were a much, much, much better team than Tennessee. That shouldn't have been an 8-9. In fact, I think you could have snuck in an Alabama. Sure. I think Alabama is better than Tennessee. I think you could have snuck in even an Iowa State. Be totally honest with you. And I think those teams would have given Ohio State a better game than what Tennessee did. So no, Lane and Paul, it's not the narrative you think it is. And it's funny that we got to the last game of the first 4 on campus to get to it, but prove once again that it's not the SEC just being leagues better than everyone else. And it was just a great way to kind of destroy that narrative. Do we want to destroy Utah? Do we want to get them out of the Big 12? Do the fans even want to be there? Let's cap this thing off by going after that next on Locked On Baylor. The NFL playoffs are almost here, but you can still get in on the regular season action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can finish the season with $250 in bonus bets if when your first $5 bet wins. They just have so many ways for you to pick up that dub. I love betting on like that anytime touchdown or first time touchdown. It makes me root for offense, which is what we all kind of want at the end of the day. You don't even have to bet on who's winning the game. You can do that. You could do which player's going to score, who's going to score first, how many points each team's going to score. So much fun to do on FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your chance at $250 in bonus bets. So make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
Cam, I've been wanting to have this discussion with another Locked On host for a little bit now, and you guys have played Utah 2 years in a row, so I thought this would be something fun to discuss. Utah is a very polarizing presence in the Big 12. Some of the fans have done Utah no favors. Some of the Utah fans, like by painting a target on the back. I know for me, like people weren't happy with how I talked about the Utah team coming into last year because like most of the media I thought they were a deserving favorite to win the conference on paper. And Cam gets hurt and a bunch of other things happen. And you just didn't go Utah's way. But I'll say this. I do think despite all the drama and everything, I do think Utah works in the Big 12. In fact, I think they're really fun in the Big 12 because I think in a lot of ways they're a villain. And that's where it makes it a lot of fun is that other teams get frustrated with them. And I kind of like that in some ways Utah has that target on their back. I think this is a fun conference too. I've just enjoyed being part of the Big 12, building these new rivalries, having the games involved. I hope Utah is looking to stay in the Big 12, and I do think that they are. And I've enjoyed this first year. I'm excited about the future. I think Utah works in the Big 12. How do you see it?
Well, I think to throw a question at a question, and you kind of touched on it in there, isn't so much isn't so much as Utah, do they work in the Big 12? Do Utah fans want them to work in the Big 12? I think is more of the question from our standpoint, because I think they work great. And we talked about this in the preseason. Like Utah, as like I would say a program on the rise. It's been on the rise for 15 years, really, or 20, even if you want to go back even farther. But in terms of building up that brand and that recruiting status and the big time bowl games and all that, and the strides that Utah has made as a school, which shouldn't be kind of pushed aside either for when you're taking someone into a conference. It is a major state university that has a big old football stadium, wins a lot of games. That to me fits right in with the Big 12, which rocks, by the way. The Big 12 rocks.
Yes,
and it's too bad that some Utah fans don't see that, because I see Ute fans on Twitter all the time talking about how, this part of the Big 12 sucks. And, look at the attendance in the Big 12 championship game. We had better attendance when we were in the Pac-12. It's like, you want to go back to the Pac-12? Go back. They'll take you in a second. I mean, you want to go and have that? And that plus I look at the standings at a team that was 2-7 in this conference, this awful conference with no fans and no prestige. It's like, man, do you even want to be here? Like, I mean, I would have loved Baylor to get another shot at Utah with Sawyer Robertson at quarterback for the Bears. So it's more a question for me of like, I see all these fans on Twitter. It's like, do they want to be in the Big 12? Because I think there's a lot of cool stuff going on in the Big 12. And again, with Utah's stability, I think they're a team that could be challenging for the conference championship most years. That's what we're trying to figure out in this new conference without UT and Oklahoma, although UT kind of took the last decade off, of who's going to be that team that's kind of in the mix every year. And if you had asked me before the season, I would have told you Utah and Oklahoma State. And we saw how that factored in this year with a combined 2-16 conference record. But I think those are two teams that should be in the mix every year. And again, this is not a diss on Utah. This is like, I think, a compliment on Utah. This is where they should be. Like, this is the kind of conference Utah should be in. They Pac-12 obviously would make more sense geographically, but it's not there anymore. Then you're playing Utah State in conference. Have fun with that. You know what I mean? But it's not there anymore. The Big 12 is a perfect spot for them. They're biggest rivals in this conference. It expands their recruiting map, which I know we're going to talk about. And it is the third best conference in America. Like, I don't know that a Utah program competes in the Big 10 or the SEC every year. I can't say that at all, but I can say it with the Big 12. And you saw it. I mean, this was actually kind of a everyone beats everybody year in the Big 12. Most years you're going to have, in a 12-team format, two teams either in or around that 12 playoff. And so if I'm Utah, I'm like, look, this is a conference that is going to give me the best chance to be successful every year. I wouldn't be denigrating the Big 12 as much as some fans are on social media.
Great points, but number one, I got to start with technically 3-7. I want that win against Baylor to count. We still beat.
Hey, I mean, I think that's actually fair. I think that's fair.
I will say something that I totally agree with you. If Utah, because I've done this before with BYU, because that a couple years ago when BYU beat Utah, by the end of the year, Utah was better than them. Baylor was better than Utah by the end of the season. But I still want that win as a conference win counted. That's where like we get compared to an Oklahoma State who didn't win this. It's like, oh, Utah only won 2 more games. Well, technically, we at least got to win against.
I think that's fair. I think that's fair.
Another thing that you brought up that was so true, just about like people bringing up the attendance in the Big 12 title game. I can find several examples of Pac-12 championship games that were not well attended. So I don't think that should be used as a metric.
Like the Big 12, it didn't have a great attendance this year. It did not. I thought that was a bad look. But you look around also college football this year, the conference championship games did not have the same sting with a 12-team playoff. Which look,
they did not.
If these opening campus rounds of the playoff are fantastic, which they probably should be,
I think they will.
Then you'll probably concede as a fan that the conference championship games aren't that great. But sorry, I didn't mean to hijack that. It was just such an interesting point. I thought that they were like, oh, look at the attendance. Like, who cares, really?
Well, I mean, some of those too. Like if we do when Utah played USC, geographically, that was a 7-hour trip for the Trojans. I want to say it's a 6-hour trip for Utah, a drive. The Iowa State and the Sun Devils don't have that luxury. That's not as
Trust me, I basically just did that. It's not fun. Long? It's not a lot. I mean, to Ames from Arlington, it was probably like 7 or 8 hours.
Oh, so it is a long. Okay, so it actually is a long.
It's a haul. It's kind of a haul, man. I mean, then again, you do have like a lot of Kansas City, Iowa State people. So anyway,
we're not locked on geography, so I apologize. I apologize if that was wrong there, but I just do feel like it's a longer drive and trip. So like it's just not as convenient as some of those Pac-12 titles were. And there are definitely years where the Pac-12 attendance was down. So I'm not a fan of that. And I think talking about some of the other things you brought up, this is the other thing I'll say that just makes it very hard when Utah's athletic director goes out there and says we were not happy to be in the Big 12 today. And I do believe, like, if you listen and ask Mark Harlan, he meant in that moment, he let his frustration get the best of him and was talking specifically about that moment. But at the end of the day, the athletic director at Utah said, we're not happy right now. I'm not happy to be in the Big 12. That's what he said. Did he mean in general, as in all athletics? No, he just meant in that exact moment because he was frustrated with the refs, even though one of the refs was a Pac-12 ref. So that's where it was also kind of a wild statement that he made when he was just losing his mind there. So overall, I do believe most Utah athletics, I think, is happy in the Big 12. And I also believe that Utah fans are happy to be in the Big 12. There's always going to be that majority that thinks that they're just better, I guess. But unfortunately, it's just not true. And another thing you mentioned too, did I want, back when all the conference realignment was going crazy, was I hopeful that Utah was going to make the Big Ten? Yeah, it was just like the best. It's the best of the like Big Ten SEC. Like that's the club that if you can get into, you want to be into. But Utah is not in a position where they can compete for conference titles in the Big Ten. So I'm glad they're in the Big 12, where what's fun about the Big 12 is we have so many different teams and brands that can win it. People could say that's crazy. Arizona State just won the league and they were picked to finish dead last. So this is a wild conference. It's an open conference. I think it's a lot of fun. This is where Utah belongs. And I think overall, most fans are happy for it. They're enjoying it. They're excited because this is the future. Like this is what Utah is in now. There's a lot of exciting things. These new rivalries I mentioned that are being built, and the opportunity to get to the playoff each year for Utah exists because of this format. So I believe most Utah fans are happy, Cam, but I definitely get what you're saying in terms of that. There's a vocal majority on social media that doesn't make it feel like Utah fans are happy.
That's where you get the villain stuff.
That's right.
Look, I mean, every conference needs a couple of those too.
They do. Is it Utah? Do you view Utah as the biggest villain in the Big 12? This is definitely going to be a title on this show in the future. Like, is Utah the villain of the Big 12?
Right now, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's weirdly because of a social media presence. I mean, obviously, like you mentioned, Mark Harlan didn't do any favors right there. But here, you can clip it. Utah is the villain of the Big 12. Like, full stop. We got rid of UT and OU, which were the ultimate villains. Like, and there will be some ones that pop up periodically. You know, nobody outside of Boulder really loved CU in the conference this year. They weren't big Colorado fans. That could be one. But Utah came in with this air of superiority And it absolutely translated online, which is where we're going to judge most of these fan bases now. So yeah, Utah is the villain of the Big 12 right now.
And it can't be Iowa State and Arizona State. I'm sorry, but like Iowa State was their first time making the conference title game in forever. Like if they go on a dynasty, obviously you become that. The Chiefs weren't always the most disliked team in the NFL, and now they definitely are, just like the Patriots were back then. Arizona State, they just won it 1 year and they picked to finish dead last. I don't see them as the villain. I think
if they keep winning though, that Dillingham, that could get annoying.
That's a great point.
I'm telling you
about how teams and people view Kenny Dillingham.
Man,
he could build himself into that. But yeah, just like Alabama is like the villain of the SEC for what they had done, and more so in Utah's case, right? It's not what they've done in the Big 12, it's how they spoke when entering it too, and coming in with some recent conference championship victories. So they felt like, okay, myself included, obviously, Utah's going to get off to a hot start, and they didn't. So I feel that way too. I think that Utah is kind of viewed as the villain in the conference, and like I said, I kind of like having the target on Utah's back personally. I just think it's kind of fun when everyone wants to talk about it's my team and me against the world. Well, in Utah, in a lot of ways in the Big 12, it actually is, because no one really roots for Utah. Not like every conference is rooting for other people too. But I think if Utah and like Texas Tech play, Cam, you're cheering for?
I'm wrecking them.
Yeah, exactly.
I got a weird relationship with Tech, but I will root for Tech over Utah. Yeah,
exactly. That's what we're talking about. So,
if it's a conference championship and Utah wins it, there will be one congratulation text to JT Wistersill, and that's it. Thanks to JT Wistersill for having me on one of my favorite Big 12 shows, Locked On Utes. You'll see that later this week. We'll talk all kinds of Baylor and Utah stuff. And I know that fires up a lot of the Utah fans. And thank you for making this your first listen today and every day. Be sure to like and subscribe. That helps out the channel a ton. We've been getting some great numbers recently. And I know that most of you are still not subscribed. So help a brother out. If you like the video, subscribe to the channel. We're giving you Baylor content 5 days a week when it's not Christmas. And we're the only place that's not straight from the university or working with the university that's giving you exclusive Baylor content. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We will see you later this week. Merry Festivus to you, and have a Merry Christmas and Happy Hanukkah, which also starts the 25th. Spend some time with your loved ones. It's a great time of year. I know I'll be drinking it all in, even though it's crazy with a couple of different families to go to. But just, I'm so thankful for you guys who have made this channel, blow up so much this year. It's been a great year for this channel, and it's really all because of you guys. So we'll check back in by the end of the week. We'll get you ready for the Texas Bowl, but wanted to wish you all a very Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. You guys mean a lot to me. So please go enjoy your family, enjoy time with your loved ones, and remember the reason for the season. Okay. That's what it's all about. And we'll see you later on this week on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.